Let me ask you something genuinely strange. If you found out that doing absolutely nothing with your money, just letting it sit in your checking account, was actually one of the most expensive decisions you could make every single year, would you believe me? Most people wouldn't, because doing nothing feels safe. It feels neutral. It feels like you're not making a mistake. But here's the thing. In finance, doing nothing is the mistake, and it costs more than almost any bad investment you could possibly make. Today, I want to walk you through something simple, not complicated, not intimidating. If I were a complete beginner in 2026, zero portfolio, zero investments, maybe a few $1,000s saved or even less than that, what would I actually do, step by step, to build toward $1 million? Not through some shortcut, not through crypto hype or some algorithm that promises 40% returns, but through something far more boring, far more reliable, and far more achievable than most people realize. Let's start from the very beginning. Meet Daniel. Daniel is 27 years old. He lives in Chicago. He works in marketing and earns around $58,000 a year before taxes, which sounds decent until you actually look at his take-home pay. After federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, and Medicare, Daniel takes home roughly $3,700 a month. Not $4,800, not $5,000, $3,700. Now let's look at where that goes. Rent on a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-tier Chicago neighborhood, $1,350. That's actually on the cheaper side in 2026. Car payment on a used Honda he bought 2 years ago, $310 a month. Car insurance, $140. Student loan minimum payment, he graduated with $34,000 in debt, $290 a month. Groceries, utilities, phone bill, streaming services, a gym membership, roughly $520. And then there's the invisible category, the one nobody budgets for honestly. Eating out, social events, a concert, a weekend trip, a birthday gift, a random Amazon order. That averages another $400 to $500 a month for most people Daniel's age. Add it up. $1,350 plus $310 plus $140 plus $290 plus $520 plus $450, that's $3,060 in committed expenses. Daniel has $640 left on a good month. Now, is Daniel doing terribly? No. Is he irresponsible? Absolutely not. He's living a very normal, very average American life in 2026. And that's precisely the problem. Because normal in 2026 means you have almost no margin. Normal means you are one car repair away from putting $800 on a credit card. Normal means that the idea of investing feels like something people with extra money do, and Daniel doesn't feel like he has extra money. But here's what Daniel doesn't yet understand, and what I want to spend the rest of this video showing you. The problem isn't the amount. The problem is the order.
There's a pattern that almost every person who builds real wealth eventually figures out, and almost every person who stays financially stuck never does. It's called paying yourself first. Now, I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but I want to show you what it actually means mathematically, because the math is genuinely shocking when you see it clearly. Let's go back to Daniel. Daniel's instinct, like most people's instinct, is to pay all his bills, live his life, and then invest whatever's left over, which on most months is around $200. On bad months, it's zero. $200 a month invested at an average 8% annual return over 30 years, because Daniel is 27 and we're talking about a long horizon, grows to roughly $298,000. That is not nothing, but it's not $1 million either. Now, let's change one thing, just one. Instead of investing whatever's left, Daniel decides that the moment his paycheck lands, he moves $500 directly into an investment account before he pays anything else. Before rent? Well, no, he still pays rent, but before the spending leaks, before the weekend decisions, before the invisible $400 disappears into lifestyle. To do this, Daniel has to tighten some things. Maybe he cooks more. Maybe he pauses one subscription. Maybe he drives the car he has instead of upgrading it. His lifestyle adjusts, not dramatically, but meaningfully. $500 a month at 8% over 30 years grows to approximately $745,000. Same salary, same city, same life largely, different order. But we're not done, because here's where it gets interesting. Over time, as Daniel gets raises, as his student loan gets paid off in year 6, as his income increases even modestly, that $500 becomes $700, then $900, then $1,100 a month. And suddenly that $1 million number isn't a fantasy, it's a projection. The math works. The math has always worked. The reason most people don't get there isn't intelligence, it isn't income, it's sequencing. Let me pause here and say something that might sound a little uncomfortable. The financial environment most of us live in, the one designed by banks, lenders, advertisers, and yes, even some employers, is not built to help you accumulate wealth. It's built to keep money flowing through you, not to you. I'm not being conspiratorial. I'm just describing how the system functions. Think about how credit cards work. They are extraordinarily convenient. They come with rewards, with points, with the quiet implication that you're sophisticated for using them. And then, at the end of the month, if you don't pay the full balance, and nearly 40% of American cardholders don't, you pay somewhere between 20 and 29% annual interest on whatever's left. Let's make that concrete. Say Daniel carries a $2,400 balance on his credit card. He pays the minimum each month, around $60. At 24% interest, that $2,400 takes over 14 years to pay off and costs him nearly $2,100 in interest alone. He essentially buys whatever he bought twice. Now here's what no one really talks about. That $2,100 he gave to the credit card company? In a market index fund over the same 14 years at 8% returns, that money would have grown to roughly $4,900. So the real cost of that $2,400 credit card balance isn't $2,100 in interest, it's closer to $7,000 when you factor in what that money could have become. That's not a lecture, that's just arithmetic. And the same logic applies to car loans on depreciating vehicles, to buy now, pay later apps, to financing a sofa. Every time you borrow money for something that loses value, you are paying a premium to own something worth less than what you paid for it, while simultaneously forfeiting the compounding potential of every dollar you hand over in interest. Now, across the Atlantic, the mechanics are slightly different, but the psychology is identical. Take Sophie. She's 29, lives in Lyon, France. She earns around 38,000 euros a year. After taxes and social contributions, she takes home roughly 2,300 euros a month. Her rent is 750 euros. She has no student debt. France's university system is heavily subsidized, which is genuinely a structural advantage. But she has a car loan, a habitual weekend spending pattern, and the very human feeling that retirement is so far away that it barely registers as real. The specific numbers differ from Daniel's, but the core pattern, income arriving, life consuming it entirely, nothing remaining, that is universal. That crosses borders, currencies, and cultures.
Here's something I find genuinely fascinating about how human beings relate to money. We are, by nature, present biased. It's not a flaw, it's how we're wired. A reward today feels larger than the same reward in 20 years, even when the math says the opposite is true. $500 today feels like $500. $500 invested for 30 years at 8% becomes roughly $5,030. But your brain doesn't feel that $5,030, it feels the $500 right now. This is why waiting feels reasonable. This is why "I'll start investing next year when I earn more" is the sentence that has quietly cost more people more money than almost any other sentence in personal finance. Let me show you the cost of waiting in a way that's hard to forget. Imagine two people. Call them Alex and Jordan. Alex starts investing $400 a month at age 25 and does it consistently until age 35, 10 years, and then stops completely. Never invests another dollar, just lets it grow. Jordan waits until 35 to start, then invests $400 a month from 35 all the way to 65, 30 years without stopping. Who has more money at 65? Alex, comfortably. Alex ends up with roughly $1.07 million. Jordan ends up with around $734,000. Jordan invested 3 times as long, 3 times as many dollars, and still came out behind. That is the compounding gap, and it exists purely because of when each person started, not how smart they were, not how high their salary was, not whether they picked the right stocks, just when they began. Now, I'm not telling you this to make you panic if you're 35 or 40 or 45. The second best time to start is still today. But I am telling you this because understanding the weight of early action, not urgent, panicked action, but calm, consistent early action, is one of the most valuable things you can carry with you after watching this video. Alright, so let's say you're Daniel or Sophie or someone in a similar position in 2026. You're starting at or near zero. What do you actually do? I want to walk through this as a sequence, not a checklist, but a genuine order of operations that mirrors how financial logic actually builds. The first thing, and this comes before any investing, is a small emergency buffer. Not a full 6-month fund right away, just 1 month of essential expenses. For Daniel, that's roughly $2,000. That number has one purpose: to prevent a car repair, a medical bill, or a broken laptop from forcing you onto a credit card and undoing everything you're building. Keep it somewhere accessible, a high-yield savings account paying 4 to 5%, which in 2026 is genuinely available and genuinely reasonable. The second thing is addressing any high-interest debt. If you carry credit card debt above 18% interest, paying that down is mathematically equivalent to earning an 18% guaranteed return. There is no index fund, no ETF, no stock on earth that offers a guaranteed 18%. This is not optional. This is the highest returning investment available to someone with high-interest debt. Student loans are more nuanced. If your rate is below 6% or 7%, particularly with income-based repayment options in the U.S. or the heavily subsidized structures in countries like Germany or France, you can often invest alongside the debt rather than aggressively overpaying it. The third thing is the actual investment account. In the United States, if your employer offers a 401k with any kind of match, you contribute at least enough to capture that match entirely. A 3% employer match on a $58,000 salary is $1,740 a year, free. Not contributing enough to capture that match is the equivalent of declining a pay raise. It is, without exaggeration, the single highest return action available to most American employees. After that, a Roth IRA. In 2026, the contribution limit is $7,000 a year. You invest after-tax dollars, and the growth, all of it, comes out tax-free in retirement. For someone in Daniel's income bracket, this is extraordinarily efficient. For Sophie in France, or a viewer in Germany, the UK, or the Netherlands, the specific wrappers differ. France has the PEA, Plan d'épargne en action. The UK has the ISA. Germany has the depot. The tax structures vary, but the principle is the same. Use whatever tax-advantaged vehicle your country provides before investing in a standard taxable account. The fourth thing, and this is where most beginner conversations stop too early, is what you actually put inside these accounts. For someone starting in 2026 with no experience, no specific knowledge of individual companies, and a long time horizon, the evidence overwhelmingly points to low-cost, broad index funds. Not individual stocks, not themed ETFs built around AI or clean energy or whatever the narrative of the moment is. Not actively managed funds charging 1.2% in annual fees. A simple total market index fund, something that tracks the entire U.S. market, or a global index that includes international exposure, with an expense ratio below 0.10%. Vanguard's VTSAX or VTI, Fidelity's F0RX, iShares MSCI World for European investors. These aren't exciting. They're not supposed to be. They're designed to capture the market's return with as little friction as possible over decades. The data on this is not ambiguous. Over any 20-year rolling period in the last century, the vast majority of actively managed funds underperform their benchmark index, not because fund managers are incompetent, but because costs compound just like returns do. A 1% annual fee on a $200,000 portfolio costs you roughly $30,000 over 20 years when you factor in lost compounding. A 0.03% fee on the same portfolio costs you less than $1,000. The boring choice is usually the correct one.
Now let's talk about the part of this conversation that's rarely discussed honestly. The strategy I just described doesn't require a high income. It doesn't require perfect financial circumstances, but it does require a certain relationship with your lifestyle, a conscious one. There's a pattern I've noticed in people who build wealth quietly and consistently. They tend to make one specific choice that most of their peers don't make, and it has nothing to do with knowing which stock to buy. They delay lifestyle inflation. Here's what that looks like in real life. Daniel gets a $4,000 raise at 28. His peers, his friends, his colleagues, the general cultural current he swims in, would almost universally use that raise to upgrade something: a nicer apartment, a newer car, a few more dinners out per week. This is called lifestyle creep, and it's not a moral failing. It's a completely natural response to earning more money. But the mathematically intelligent response, the one that actually changes Daniel's trajectory, is to route at least half of every raise directly into his investment account before it ever integrates into his spending pattern. A $4,000 raise is $333 a month after rough tax adjustments. If $180 of that goes into his Roth IRA, Daniel's monthly investment goes from $500 to $680, and his lifestyle still improves, just more modestly. Do this with 3 or 4 raises over a decade, and Daniel's monthly investment contribution goes from $500 to over $1,000, almost organically, without ever feeling like deprivation. This is not sacrifice, it's architecture. It's designing the system so the default outcome is wealth accumulation, not wealth consumption. And on the European side, Sophie's structural advantage, the one worth noting, is that her healthcare isn't a financial catastrophe risk the way it can be in the United States. The absence of that fear gives her more psychological and financial breathing room. But the temptation in many European cities is a culture of frequent travel, weekend experiences, quality of life spending that, while entirely valid as life choices, requires the same conscious awareness. The math doesn't care which continent you're on. Let's close the loop on the number. $1 million. It sounds large. It sounds like a destination for other people. But let's see what the path actually looks like for someone starting from zero in 2026. If Daniel begins at 27, invests $500 a month consistently, increases that by roughly $150 every 2 years as his income grows, which is a very modest assumption, and earns an average annual return of 7%, adjusted for more conservative expectations, he reaches approximately $1 million by his late 50s, probably around 57 or 58. If he starts at $700 a month from the beginning by making slightly more intentional spending decisions early, he gets there closer to 54. If he's in a dual income household, as many people eventually are, and both partners operate this way, the timeline compresses dramatically. None of these scenarios require a six-figure salary. None of them require a stock-picking genius. None of them require unusual sacrifice or a monastic relationship with money. They require starting. They require consistency. And they require understanding that the enemy of long-term wealth isn't the stock market. It's the gap between what you earn and what you keep, repeated across decades. For Sophie in France or any European viewer building through an ISA, PEA, or pension scheme, the numbers in euros look different, but the proportional math is the same. The compound curve doesn't speak English or French. It speaks time.
Here's what I actually want you to walk away with. Not a step-by-step system, not 10 rules to memorize, just one shift in how you see this. Most people treat investing as the thing they do with leftover money, if there is any. And because life is designed to consume everything, there usually isn't any. The people who end up financially secure don't have a secret. They just decided at some point that their future gets paid before their lifestyle. Not all of it, not in a way that makes today miserable, but consistently, quietly, month after month. $300 a month doesn't feel like building $1 million, but compounded across a working life, it is. The market will go down. Some years will be ugly. You'll read headlines that make you want to pull everything out and wait for calmer times. The people who stay in, not because they're brave, but because they understand what volatility actually means in the context of a 30-year timeline, those are the people who reach the number. You don't need to be exceptional. You need to be early, consistent, and patient. That's it. If this video gave you any kind of clarity, even just one idea that felt useful, that's genuinely all I was hoping for. If you want to see more content like this, grounded, slow, and built around how money actually works rather than how it's sold to you, subscribing keeps this channel going. And if something in here resonated, or if you disagree with something, I'd be curious to hear it in the comments. Real conversations are more useful than passive content consumption anyway. Take care, and start, if not today, then this week.